Hi, this is Dawn, and welcome to the May 2nd session of Transaction Review and Calculator Practice. And I'm glad that you could be here. And for those that who are listening afterward, always great to have you on board and be able to catch you up on what happened. A lot's had happened in the last month. I taught a one-day class on pumping pay for profits, and one or two of you were there. And Ken, I see you on the call, so thanks for coming to that. It was a delight to meet you. And then there was the cash flow profits seminar in Las Vegas. That was just really wonderful. To me, it was like I guess if you're new in the note business, you wouldn't know that back in the old days, I would say for 20, almost 30 years, Noteworthy was one of my most favorite cash flow conventions, and that's where I met a lot of my mentors and influences in my life. And so in 2009, when I was no longer associated with them due to some changes they had internally, I've sort of missed that sense of community. And I would say that this year in Vegas with Bill Mancaro's cash flow profits thing he put on, it was like this is the papersourceseminars.com. It was like Noteworthy being reborn, except in the way that it used to feel, not kind of how it's evolved to be now. But if you want to come here, you can see what happened. You can see that they're already planning to go back next year. I've already put that in my calendar, and then you can see the speakers, and then there's these videos. I think a lot of them are just teleseminars that were recorded so that you know what they're kind of about. So I just wanted to point that out to you. I learned so much, and one of the best things about going to these is the people that you meet, and deepening old relationships, building new relationships. It's really a pleasure, as being honored to be able to speak with a lot of the people who were the leaders back when I was brand new in the late 90s and early 2000s. And it's great to call these people your friends and know that if you got a problem or a question, you just pick up the phone and call them and ask them. So to me, one of the best things about being in the note business is building the relationships with people. So just things I'm pointing out here. For non-performing and reperforming notes, Gordon Moss, Jack Krupe, and you can look at these on the other site as well. For private performing seller carryback first position notes, which is what I deal in also, sort of angling towards helping them come together in the first place when we're in an owner finance situation. Jeff Armstrong has been in this classic note business for 22 years. He's an extremely knowledgeable asset to the industry. I brand new met a guy who's a CPA, but he's much more than a CPA. This guy is absolutely wild and fun and smarter than anything, just too smart for his own good. But his name's John Groom. I would suggest that you go check him out, because after you spend a lot of hard work and money and time getting rich, you want to use the strategies that can keep you that way. And so John was actually Jack Miller's CPA, for those of you who know that Jack Miller was one of those legends in the real estate and paper investing arenas. So that was really a pleasure to meet him. Just a hoot. Plus he's a musician and a sheriff and I mean, this guy, he seems like he's living two or three lives in one. There's other really interesting that I had sort of forgotten about, but factoring is huge. I mean, people who focus on this can make loads and loads of money on a passive and revolving basis. So factoring is buying invoices from companies, so their cash flow is good, but you give them the money at the beginning of the month so that they can keep their cash flow going, and you'll be the one to wait the 45 or 60 days to collect on the invoice. So and then there's structured settlements and lotteries and all sorts of random cash flows. So just check out Marty Granoff. He's been in business a long time. He puts out an e-newsletter called Cash Flow Exclusive. I want to say that's what it is. And then Bob McMahon of Aegis Factors. And he teaches for Rich Dad Poor Dad's organization as well. So anyway, just kind of a recap of that, except for I just thought this was so good because I don't do any direct mail in my business. So I thought I took copious notes when Jeff Armstrong was talking about his direct mail campaign. Over 50% of his businesses, his note purchases come from direct mail. And I think I can't remember his numbers. He does something more like 50 or 60 notes a year. So even if he didn't keep any of them, he's probably making 200 grand plus a year just brokering notes. And so the direct mail campaign has always been a bit of a mystery to me and not something I never really learned. But here's what he does. He mails a letter the first time. He gets a list, and he has a couple of guys that he recommends that you buy lists from that are the most reputable, and you can contact him about that at jeff@armstrongcapital.com. But he mails a letter first to these people who have carried back a note on property they used to own, but now they're the bank on that property. Then every 6 months he sends out a postcard for 3 times. So a letter, 6 months, postcard, 6 months, postcard, 6 months. So at the end, at month 18, you're done. You've sent him 1 letter, 3 postcards, and here's the things that he's learned after his copious statistic keeping of what works for a direct mail campaign. This is just a small part of it, and it's constantly evolving. So if this is something that attracts you, you need to learn from Jeff and to stay fresh on his latest and greatest. But he dropped a few really interesting tidbits here that I just thought I would share with you. He said the letter should be on white linen paper. The envelope doesn't have to be white linen, but the paper itself should be white linen. People seem to like the envelope that had the little window for the address to show through. You know, the address on the paper itself shows through the envelope. There should be a return address. It's P.O. box is good. Sometimes he puts a red stamp that says time-sensitive material enclosed, just stamping the outside of the envelope somewhere. He uses Palatino font, and I just can imagine that, the font makes that much difference. But these are the things he's just tested to see how what gives him the best response, because direct mail is not cheap. You have to have, a committed monthly budget for direct mail. So you want to make sure that you're getting the biggest bang for your buck. He says, dear first name. So whatever their first name is, it seems to be better than Mrs. Somebody or, note holder or something like that. So dear, whatever their first name is. He puts the word cash, it's capitalized and bolded 17 times throughout the letter in kind of a Z fashion, like this, starting at the left, right, down. He says that's the way people's eyes go, so they see cash, 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 cash. He stressed this so much. It must have a PS at the end. So a lot of people, they sort of skim the letter and they go right to the PS. So if you don't have something down there in the PS, you're going to lose it. So he says he puts sometimes $500 bonus if you call now. He always has a call to action at the bottom. Keep this letter in your mortgage file, because you want someone who didn't even know they could sell the note but thought that's interesting to keep it with their stuff, so that if they ever decide to sell, they'll go, hey, I remember a guy sent me something. So you tell them to keep it with their other paperwork. Call now, the phone number. And he says, hand sign your signature with a number 10 medium blue rolling rider ballpoint pen. Isn't that specific? He says he tried doing it all different ways. This works the best. Number 10 blue ballpoint pen. You got a spring for a first class stamp. So much the better if you get one of those commemorative stamps. And you send out your stuff on a Friday, and he usually starts getting his calls on a Monday or Tuesday. His stats were somewhere in the 2 to 5% response rate, which is really good, actually. So, but he is a very serious business person in the note business, so can't recommend him enough if that's going to interest you. Of why do people become the bank, and depending on how they carry paper, like how they engineer their transaction, I want to show you how different the numbers can be, and so that you can appreciate the wide variety and the strength and value of the paper that people give birth to, when they close their owner finance transaction. So I'll put this to aside right here. But these are consulting clients of mine. They had the rental income, and I think they're members of the community too still, and so they'll see this again. But this was just a wonderful thing. They had this investment property, commercial property. They're getting rental income for 14 years, $3,200 a month. They had taxes, insurance, and maintenance was coming out to about $500 a month, so their net monthly cash flow was $2,700 a month. It's a little bit of a hassle, even though he's a really good tenant. There's always, you never know when the tenant's gonna call with a repair, or what if they have a grease fire because it's a restaurant below and single family dwelling above. So there's that uneasy feeling like that could happen. But what's great about property is that you get depreciation, at least for your, 24 or 39 years, whatever it is, depending on the type of property. So that helps you with your taxes. And you have future appreciation. Eventually, even if things go down, eventually they go up again. And usually you can consider it a hedge on inflation, because if inflation goes up, then this rent payment will go up to match inflation, hypothetically speaking, unless there's some other economic depression in the marketplace. So what happened is the tenant said, "Can I buy the thing?" And so they did an appraisal, and it appraised out for $500,000, but the tenant only had $50,000, which is 10% on a commercial or a mixed use is pretty skinny. You would want probably more in the order market would be 25 to 35% down. But this really made sense, all things considered. So what they did is they took the $50,000 down, and the note was $450,000. They played around with the numbers, and first they figured out what's the most he can pay. The most he could pay for principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, so basically the housing or payment on the commercial building, was $5,500. So they wanted to stay under that, so not to stretch his monthly budget. And so they reverse engineered it to say, how can we get the highest interest rate with the shortest term to give us the highest present value for the note, basically, and we'll go over that in a second. So they came up with 9 3/4 interest rate and fully amortized over 12 years. 12 times 12 is 144. In this case, look at how they doubled their income. Now they're getting twice as much from this same property. They don't have any taxes or insurance or repairs. That's the job now of this tenant, who's now the owner. Now they're not owners, they're the bank, and they don't have any hassle. They set up a third-party servicing company to collect the payments and collect impounds. So they were impounding for taxes and insurance to make sure he didn't get behind in either of those, which is a good idea. And they got to defer capital gains on the sale of this property. And they have potential liquidity, meaning if they ever needed some cash, they could sell all or part of this note to get a little, a big chunk of change or a small chunk of change, whatever they needed. But, notes are not necessarily a hedge on inflation like property is. I mean, rents can go up and up and up, right? But you're not, this interest rate and this payment, once you set it in place, are not going to go any higher unless you've previously agreed that would happen. So that is why someone would carry paper on property they own, because it maximizes their financial situation, simplifies their life, and gives a good tenant that they've had a chance to own a property that he may otherwise never have had to do. So let's move on to this next one. So when we were going through and figuring this out, I'm going to clear all here. Here we have the note, $450,000. The interest rate is 9.75. Term is 144. And then, I'll just leave that alone. It'll autofill to 0 if I don't touch it. So that's how we get our payment. So I want us to see what the total would be. What's the total if you collect all 144 payments over the next 12 years? How much are you collecting? So you can see from here, the amortization schedule that pops up is, it's probably hard to see. Hopefully I'll enlarge it with the replay, but the total paid is $765,000 and change. So the principal is back, 450 in principal plus 315,000 of interest over the term of 12 years. Okay, so that's how the total collected over the full years if it fully amortizes out. And also then I wanted to see though, let's just see to compare present value against apples to apples. So I wanted to say, what if they were trying to sell this note after 1 year of seasoning, after they've received 12 months, and in this case they would have 132 payments left. Okay, so then I would go, you know, down here 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'd go to 12. I'd go over here and I'd say, okay, the balance of the note after 12 payments is going to be 429,205. 429,205. I'll put that as a negative number over here. Okay, so after 12, I got to change my n, right? Because after 12 months of getting this payment amount, I'm going to get a balloon payment, or I'm sorry, that's not right. Oh, that's not right. I did want to show you that, but I got ahead of myself. That's the last slide. So I'm going to put that back to 0. So if I have 132 payments left, okay, and I want to buy this note after 1 year of seasoning, and I'm just going to say that I want a 14% yield. It's a commercial property. That seems like a fair thing to shoot for to me. Oops, where'd we go? So 14 I'm going to put in here. So I'm going to get $5,313, 132 times, and I want a 14% yield. So let me click here to get present value. So 356, 896. Well, you can see it's pretty close. Sometimes you'll have a little bit different calculations depending, but you can see we're what, $4, $5 difference there. Okay, so the note, so basically that's 75 cents on the unpaid balance, the UPB. Now, what if we just changed it a little bit and we said, but, you know, gosh, most commercial loans are amortized over 20 years. So what if we kept everything the same, but we gave, let's put it back in, 450,000 and the same 9.75 interest. And we gave them 240 months instead. So then what would the monthly amortization be? Okay, then they'd be paying still a lot, not quite as high. 4268.33 would be their monthly payment. If they went all out, I go over to the amortization and I look at this number here. The total paid would be the 450 of principal plus even more, $574,000 in interest over that term. Okay. And if I wanted to buy this, so I will take 240, okay, and minus 12 equals I'll have 228 payments left. And I want a 14% yield. So I click on here. And it's my present value is $339. Okay, now let's see. You know, what is this? About $16,000 difference or something like that. Not too much, but kind of interesting, huh? That the total you collect here is much higher than here, but the present value, if you're going to need to sell, because the time value of money, this is so much longer, if it would be, you'd do better to sell this note than this note. You'd come out a little bit ahead. Okay, now this time I'm going to use the other calculator because a lot of people are using handhelds. Okay, so I want to do some practice doing that as well. Clear all. just put in 450. Now, a lot of buyers are, if you were the buyer, you would probably say, hey, I want a better interest rate than that. Can you give me something closer to what the bank would give me? And depending on the situation, you may or may not. Or if you give them 6%, you might make the purchase price a little higher. But here's what happens. Oops. 450 PV. See, in this one, the handheld doesn't show you what you've got in each of the categories. You always have to go look. Okay, 120 in there. Just to be safe, I put a 0 in future value here, and then I'm going to calculate for payment here. So here I get almost 5,000 because of the short amortization. Even though the interest rate is low, we've got a really aggressive amortization schedule. So we could find out. I wonder. Let's see. So let's do this amortization. One input, 120. Shift, amortization. So in the period between all these payments, I'm going to hit the equal sign here. I'm going to get my 450 back in principal. I'm going to get 149 in interest, a lot less than that other one. It was almost 600,000, right? And the balance would be that. It doesn't really tell me the total on this thing. That's interesting. Well, anyway, you can see, what you'd be making there is your 450 plus another 150. So, about this 600,000 here. So let's get back to this regular screen. And, okay, we've got 120. It's got a year's worth of seasoning, so minus 12 equals 108. I'm going to push N there. That's my new term. I want my 14% yield. And so now I'm going to calculate for PV. That's even less, right? I'm only going to get 305. This number keeps going down. Okay, and I'm going to do clear all, although we could save it there. So we've got our one other example. Hey, 6%, but look, most people, I really like a 30-year loan. The banks give 30-year loans sometimes. Do you think you can do that for me? And you may decide you want to do that or not if you were the seller. But if you're the buyer, you would probably want this because look how much lower that monthly payment is. 6% is in there. 360 is in my N. I'm just going to see this recall button right there? Recall. What do I have in there? 6. Okay, good. Recall 360, recall 450, recall future values. Good. So now I hit payment and I get 26.97 or 26.98 if you round it. So if you were buying it and you didn't need to own it for outright, this would be a pretty good deal. But let's say we got 360 and after a year the person tries to sell the note. Minus 12 equals 348. So that goes in our N over here. And I'm going to put in the yield that I want. I want a 14% yield. I might want to go higher if I'm going to go out longer, because what if inflation, shoots up past my 14%, then I won't be that happy. But statistically speaking, this will probably pay off before. They'll either refinance or sell the property. So then you'll have an unearned discount or one of those surprise upsides that I like to talk about. So if you bought it at 14% yield and you have like 29 years to go and it pays off in 7 or 10 years, your yield will probably jump to like 20 or 22%, something like that. I don't know. You'd have to play with the numbers. So that's kind of the nice upside of buying the discounted amortizing paper. So let's see, 14. So let's see, what will I pay for this? Oh, wow. Look how much that drops to. Can you see how term is so powerful here? Woo-wee. Look at this. That is a lot of difference. 100,000, more than 100,000 difference because same interest rate, same everything. The only thing is this was a 10-year AM. This is a 30-year AM. More money sooner is better. Okay. So that should be pretty shocking right there. All right. So in summing this up, and you can see that depending on how they put their paper together, and if you take this to an attorney or escrow or title, if the sellers would have gone there, they would have perhaps, not necessarily always, got the paperwork and the math to be right, but they may not understand the ramifications of the discount that they're setting themselves up for, or their heirs and beneficiaries, if their heirs inherit the note and decide to sell it. We can see that, my goodness, look at this. And then you can put all these scenarios together and go, wait, if I'm the seller, what's most important to me? If income, and I don't have a way to make better than 9 3/4 on my money, and I know I never will, well, I might want to stretch it out, because look, I can get $1 million. That's the highest out there right there. But if I thought I was going to sell, then I want this option right here, don't I? If I'm the buyer, what is it that's turning my seller on? What do they want? Do they want this number to be big and fat, or are they thinking they're going to need to sell and maximize the present value of their note? And this is a little graph I made. I put those exact numbers into a graph so you could actually see. The red thing here is the actual note balance. And you can see that after 12 months of payments, the UPB, unpaid principal balance, is pretty close to being equal here, right? So, but, and this blue graph or blue bar here is the total income that you can see. It's just really interesting to say that this 30-year amortization is one of the highest in total income, but quite a bit lower in terms of present value. So if you're selling the note, you're going to take a much, much bigger discount. So one of the reasons we went with this one, for this seller wanted this option to get as short as amortization as they could while keeping the interest rate up there, is because even though 9 3/4 is good, these people actually, once they carried paper on this property, I said, hey, now you're note investors. How about now you go and buy notes that other people have created? And so they go, yeah, that's a great idea. So they have a way to make better, or at least 9 3/4. So for them to pick the option that has the highest present value at all times really makes a lot of sense. And I don't know if you followed that, but anyway, this is the total income, the blue. The green is the present value, and you can see that quite different. So anyway, I hope that was helpful. If you have questions, you want to type in a chat button or unmute yourself or something like that, feel free to do that. But otherwise, I hope to see you around soon. I appreciate you. Thank you for being with me tonight, and I wish you the best. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.